women are banned from becoming priests in the Catholic Church, but at the same time, Catholics venerate a woman above all other saints. In this video, I would like to analyze this seeming contradiction and explore power in Christianity. What is power in the Church? Who should have it? And what happens when women gain it? To understand this, I'd like to present 3 examples of women who had immense influence in the Catholic Church, and then I'll analyze what they had in common and what we can learn from their lives for the 21st century. For example, you might have heard of Saint Joan of Arc. As a teenager, she received visions which instructed her to help save France from English occupation. At the age of 17, she led the French army in a series of victorious battles in the 100 Years' War. But things didn't end gloriously for Joan of Arc herself, because at the age of 19, she was accused of heresy and blasphemy, for example, because she wore men's clothes, which led to her being excommunicated from the Catholic Church and finally burned alive. Years later, the Catholic Church realized that her trial was unfair and that burning her was a mistake, and now she is venerated as a saint. Another famous example is Saint Catherine of Siena, who had no formal education and was essentially illiterate. But that didn't stop her from convincing the Pope to end a scandalous situation back then, and she also worked to keep the Church united during the start of the Great Schism, all while still in her 20s and early 30s. She dictated hundreds of letters to popes and rulers, she acted as a peacemaker, and died at just 33. She is also venerated as a saint and even a doctor of the Church now. The final example I'd like to bring up is Saint Therese of Lisieux, who outwardly didn't accomplish anything special during her life, so that after she died at the age of 24, the sisters at her convent didn't know what to say about her life. But today we know Saint Therese as the greatest saint of modern times, and also as a doctor of the Church. All she did to gain that title was write her autobiography, where she outlined her famous little way to sanctity and the so-called elevator of love, which is the fastest and easiest way to grow in holiness. It took me years to understand the value of her teachings, but now it's clear to me that her teachings are the most advanced theological technology any saint in the Catholic Church has ever developed. Now, some people might claim that women shouldn't be doctors of the Church at all because of Bible passages like 1 Timothy 2:12, which says, "I permit no woman to teach or to have authority over men, she is to keep silent." But the thing is that the title itself doesn't matter. Brilliant theological insights remain brilliant theological insights regardless of whether we call their inventors doctors of the Church. Also, Catholicism has the great feature of interpreting scripture in light of tradition, so passages like 1 Timothy 2:12 aren't a reason to make Catholics nervous, because while the Catholic Church infallibly teaches that women can't become priests, for centuries, Catholic women have been teaching in schools, writing theological books, and in one instance, even commanded armies. And as mentioned in the beginning of this video, the Catholic Church venerates Mary as the Queen of Apostles, Queen of Prophets, Queen of Confessors, and Queen of all Saints. And you'll hopefully understand this paradox by the end of this video. Interestingly, the criticism I receive most often on this channel is that I am a woman talking about theology. And I have to admit, I am in fact a woman, guilty as charged. And I have a serious question for the people who criticize me for that. Could you please put your denomination in brackets after those comments? I'm just curious which theological corner this criticism is coming from. Either way, let's analyze the 3 examples of influential and powerful Catholic women that I just described. One thing they all have in common is that they were all saints. And this is precisely the key to understanding what power in the Church is. Jesus says that He is the vine and we are the branches. If we remain in Him and He in us, we will bear much fruit, but apart from Him, we can do nothing. Another characteristic these women have in common is that they had disproportionately greater impact than their qualifications would allow to expect. I mean, they were all very young and lacked formal theological education. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get at with this video. Our God makes His power perfect in weakness. That's why St. Paul boasts about his weaknesses, because when we are weak, then we are strong. Making His power perfect in weakness is the signature move of our God, and we can observe this since the beginning of time. For example, when Lucifer, the greatest of all angels, rebelled against God, he was defeated by the archangel Michael, who was part of one of the lowest ranks among all angels. Then, when it was time to defeat Goliath, God sent David, who gained victory by using just a sling. In the New Testament, God honored a simple handmaid to participate in his incarnation. And also the first woman to witness the resurrected Jesus was a woman who is known to have been a great sinner. Then there's also the fact that very often when Mary appears to someone, she disproportionately often chooses to appear to children, and in particular girls or young women. So being weak is actually a strength in Christianity. By choosing to act through his weakest servants, God demonstrates his power and rewards humility at the same time. The more ridiculous the weakness of the servant, the clearer the world can see that there is a God. I mean, think about it. A 17-year-old girl leading the French army into victory in the Middle Ages? That's absurd. And it proves that with God, we really can do all things. So if we have something that makes us weak, like for example, physical weakness, a disability, or having been a great sinner, we are actually perfect for God to accomplish great things through us. Now, in case anyone who is watching this just got sad because they can't spot any weaknesses in themselves, I have great news for you. Thinking that is a weakness in itself because it constitutes pride, which is the deadliest of the 7 sins. Okay, you might be thinking now that the big difference between you and great saints is that you didn't have an apparition that instructed you on what you're supposed to do. But the thing is that a personal invitation like that is necessary. And there's even a saint that proves this, namely Saint Ignatius of Loyola. His reason for becoming a saint was that he read about the lives of the saints, realized that they accomplished cool stuff, and he just wanted to become like them. So Saint Ignatius literally just stood up from bed one day and decided to become a saint. And as we know, he became one of the greatest saints of the 16th century. All just because one day he decided to become a saint and then kept doing God's will until the end of his life. Or to give you a more recent example that shows that a personal invitation is necessary, Lila Rose just decided one day that she wanted to do something against abortion and started asking God to use her for that mission. And now, lo and behold, today she is one of the most influential pro-life activists in the world. So regardless of who you are, you could literally wake up tomorrow and decide to become a saint, and you'll figure out what you're supposed to do along the way. Most of the time, we don't need an angel telling us what God's will is, because we know what God wants us to do. Keep his commandments, frequent the sacraments, and above all, love. As St. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing." And if we realize that we're currently lacking love, that's not a reason to worry, because God is almighty, and if he could create a universe from nothing, he can ignite our hearts with love if we just ask for it. So what counts is the decision to do God's will, and God will supply the rest along the way, as he did with St. Ignatius, who initially wanted to become a saint for his own greater glory, until God transformed him into someone whose life motto became God's greater glory. Becoming a saint is the way to gain true power in this world, and this world becomes a better place the more people strive for that type of power, because being a saint means bringing love and peace into this world. Now, becoming a saint is of course easier said than done. Recently, I was talking to a friend who is discerning the priesthood, and when I asked him what's holding him back from becoming a priest, he said that being a hero isn't as romantic as he imagined it to be in his head. To which I replied that that's precisely what makes heroism heroic. Being a hero is always a package deal of thorns and roses. You can't have the glory if you don't actually do something hard that other people don't want to do. Even Jesus was in agony, sweating blood at the thought of the suffering that was awaiting him during his passion. Even Jesus prayed, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." That's what it means to be a hero. Being obedient to God's will, even to death on the cross. But we shouldn't be scared of God's will, because God is love. God's will is for love to reign the world. Just as the resurrection followed after the crucifixion, so every person who picks up their cross and follows Jesus will be rewarded. St. Alphonsus said that beyond the possibility of a doubt, God works to effect our welfare infinitely better than we could ever hope to accomplish or desire it ourselves. And St. Catherine of Siena said that all the way to heaven is heaven. Although I must add as a disclaimer that in this sense, purgatory is a part of heaven, and it's possible to experience periods of darkness, which can be purgatory on earth. But let's remember that we have one life on this earth, so why not do something cool with it, even if it's hard? That can be something as radical as becoming a priest, but it can also mean being the sunshine in the lives of the people around us and spread God's love in that way. Let's just offer our life to God and He will use it for good. It really makes a difference whether lay Catholics are lukewarm or on fire for the truth. Because as St. Pope Pius X once said, "In our time, more than ever before, the chief strength of the wicked lies in the cowardice and weakness of good men. All the strength of Satan's reign is due to the easygoing weakness of Catholics." Today, in the 21st century, we might be living in particularly secular times, but we also have the theological technology to equip people for the fight for love like the world has never seen them before. Let me explain. St. Therese of Lisieux spoke of the elevator of love, and Carlo Acutis called the Eucharist the highway to heaven. But if we combined and used all the wisdom from the saints that has accumulated over the past 2 millennia, we could send rockets to heaven. For example, St. Thomas Aquinas taught that all it takes to become a saint is the will to become one, and St. Ignatius of Loyola proved that hypothesis in practice. St. Alphonsus Liguori taught us a lot about how prayer works, and St. Louis de Montfort pointed out the efficacy of Mary's intercession in particular. And then, of course, we have St. Therese of Lisieux, who invented the elevator of love. I know that some people find her teachings to be overly sweet or childish, but if her teachings are the fastest way to grow in holiness, then rejecting them is objectively irrational. That's like not using the fastest racing car just because it happens to be pink. If it's fast, it's fast. Who cares that it's pink? Now, you might have one final reservation. You aren't sure if Christianity is true, so you're not willing to risk everything for something that might turn out to be a fairy tale. And in reply to this, I'd like to read what Jesus says on the topic. Do you know what the only passage is where Jesus explains how the truth can be known? In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." To know the truth, one must become a disciple of Jesus, because by doing God's will in our lives, we realize at some point that God doesn't lie, and that His will is the best way to go through life, and that He truly is love. We've been given one life on this earth. Let's use it for good. And I hope that this video showed you that you can contribute to making this world a better place, no matter who you are. As St. Catherine of Siena said, "We've had enough exhortations to be silent. Cry out with 100,000 tongues. I see that the world is rotten because of silence."